what is a tariff? A tariff is a tax imposed by a government on an import or an export. Import meaning goods or services that you're bringing into the country. Exports meaning something that you're sending out or selling to another country. Now, why do people do tariffs? One, typically is to protect domestic industry, meaning you want to protect your steel companies from outside steel companies, meaning you don't want cheap steel from another country coming in and competing against, let's say, US steel. Also, one of the reasons to people might impose a tariff is that governments can get revenue from this, right? Like this is actual income to the government because it is a tax, hence the Boston Tea Party tax. That old school tax was a tax on tea. Okay, another reason why they might want to impose a tariff is because of a retaliatory trade war, meaning one country is tariffing you or taxing you, therefore you're going to tax them. And that's what is considered as a trade war. Now let's talk about the types of tariffs. You have an ad valorem tariff, which is basically a percentage of the goods or the value of the goods coming in, or you have a very specific tariff, which is just like a fee. Let's say a fee of $2 per t-shirt that you ship into the country. And then lastly, sometimes you can have a mix of all of those. Now let's get to where a lot of confusion happens. Who is paying for the tariff and when are they paying for the tariff? So I think when they're paying for the tariff probably is going to answer the question to who. So typically, if something is being imported into the country, then the tariff or the business or the importer is paying for the tariff at customs. Now, this is key. At customs, meaning these goods might have landed in technically the physical US, but as we should know, you're not technically in US until it goes through customs, right? And so that's where the tariff is paid. So for example, if you are a wine company and let's say you have $500,000 worth of French wine that you have already purchased, right? And it has shipped from France to America, and is now sitting at customs. And let's say you bought this under one tariff rule, like 15%, but now you're under a 200% tariff increase or change in the tariff amount. Now you owe $1 million at the US border and customs, and you cannot get your product until you pay that tariff. So that is a payment of the tariff. A lot of people say, oh, well, the other country's paying for the tariff, or the importer's paying for the tariff, or the customer's paying for the tariff. Actually, technically, it's the business and the importer themselves that's paying for the tariff. And typically, they roll that tariff over to the customer by increases in price, which causes inflation. Now, I would like to make that distinction that not technically the customer pays for it initially because it is the business. Now, check this out. In the scenario that I just gave you, what if that business does not have the cash on hand to pay for this new tariff amount? What happens? They already paid the $500,000. But what are they supposed to pull this million out their butt? How that's going to work, right? So now they're stuck. And in reality, one of the things that are not being told enough is that these businesses will likely have to go bankrupt. They might go under because some of these tariff increases are so large that some of these businesses, everybody's not $1 billion company. Some of these businesses can't afford to do the tariff anyway. Now, there are other forms of tariffs, right? So for example, if you are bringing back goods and services into the country above a free duty-free amount, then you might have to pay a tariff, right? Some of us go to Jamaica, get white Hennessy and all that kind of stuff. If you bring back too much over the amount that you're allowed, you will get taxed on that. Lastly, there's a little known tariff also called an export tariff, meaning if you are exporting a good or service to another country, there are situations where your host country will tariff you for selling to someone else. Why would they do that? Let's say natural resources, things of that nature, steel or oil or things of that nature, or rare precious metals. Your country might tariff you so you don't get excessive in selling out all of our natural resources to another country. So who are the losers with these tariffs? Number one, obviously the consumer. Everybody should understand this and realize this, right? Items will become more expensive, period. Businesses will eventually pass these costs on to you. For example, if you've got a t-shirt and you sell t-shirts and it normally costs you $10 to sell a t-shirt, but now it costs you $12 because you have a 20% tariff on it. Now, are you still selling for 20 or are you going to try to raise your price to 22? You're likely going to raise your price to 22. So therefore, the customers, the end purchasers are absolutely paying those additional costs. Who else are the losers? You, the business. The importer themselves going to likely not have as much money. Their demand for their products will go down because the price has gone up. So they're going to be selling less goods and services, period. Right? That's how that works, right? Those higher costs, your customer can only pay but so much, particularly if this is not a must need item, if this is more of a consumer product, right? Which America is a consumer based economy, right? The retailers themselves, their business will be hurt. Maybe they don't have the line of credit, but so much, they can only afford so much, right? The exporter, the exporting industry, the exporting country, the other country that, yes, they will get hurt. Yes, you're right. They absolutely will get hurt because 9 times out of 10, they're going to be selling less products, right? Additionally, manufacturers and raw materials get taxed even if it's not the completed item. We understand this in the automobile industry. Not all of the automobile, the whole automobile might not get made in one country. You might have parts over here, parts over here, parts over here, all getting made in 3 different places and then the automobile might get manufactured in America. They're still subject to tariffs, right? And then the overall global supply chain, right? Tariffs just disrupts networks and disrupts everything. What do I mean by that? Well, there's large shipping companies. These shipping companies work on schedules, right? They work consistently. They're used to a certain level of consistent work, right? The longshoremen on the docks, they may not have consistent work because guess what? This month I'm bringing this in. This month I got this tariff, right? So this inconsistency in business flow will cause inconsistency in your paycheck, right? For all people, right? The people that work in these industries, the people that are on the boats, they're traveling back and forth, the longshoremen on the ports and the docks getting these goods off, right? The retailers themselves, they may not have their hiring staff because guess what? Peak moments may not happen because they might be having a sale and they can't do the sale like they used to because now the tariff is in place. So, and then overall global trade. And a lot of people say, well, globalization is bad and global trade is bad. Look, all of us should have a vested interest in having cheap items. Why should you? Every country doesn't produce everything. Let's take Great Britain, for example. Who are they? England. Who are they? They are an island. An island means you don't have a whole lot of stuff. Island means small, right? So in a case like Great Britain, if they did not have free trade, which they did this whole Brexit thing, by the way, which was not that smart. But this whole, how would they get goods and services? How would they get food? Their island can't grow certain types of food. You're not going to get spices. All of this, people are in the new world called of America because it was about trade. They were looking for new routes to get the Indian spices, y'all. This is what this is about, right? So when you blow all this up, ultimately all you do is hurt the globe. You hold everybody. Everybody in these scenarios in trade wars are losers.